So good morning. My name is Chris Hawthorne of Cleary Insurance, and today, with the help of cybersecurity expert Robert Fitzgerald of Arcas Risk Management, we are going to be discussing the questions that cyber carriers are now asking before they'll offer renewal terms or even offer a new coverage for cyber. This is a result of the market implosion in August of this year, and the underwriting has become comparatively onerous as to what it's been over the last 10 to 12 years. So we'll go through the questions, and just as importantly is we will talk about why are they asking this and what the ramifications are to your operation. The goal of this webinar is that in approximately 30 minutes, we hope that you will leave this meeting with a better understanding of how to get ready and be prepared to obtain the best possible terms for your cyber coverage. And before we begin, I just want to go through two housekeeping points. One is that we are being recorded, and hopefully you were notified of that on your entry. And two, along the way, if you have messages, or not messages, I'm sorry, questions, please go to the chat box and chat to Bethany Jacobson. And Bethany will handle the question, determine when the best time to ask the question is, because she may know that we're about to cover it in 2 slides, something to that effect. So we will do that. So, and without further ado, we will get started on the questions that you will be asked at your next cyber renewal. And I will be asking the questions, and we're fortunate enough, as I said, that Robert Fitzgerald will be answering them. So with that said, Rob, first question that we're asking clients at renewal right out of the gate as of August is, do you or an outsourced firm back up your data and systems at least once a week and store these at an off-site location? Can you explain why that's important?
So over the past year, a couple of interesting facts. Thank you, Chris, by the way. Couple of interesting facts, right? Ransomware is now prominent. It's in the news. It's in the newspapers. We're reading and seeing about it on a weekly basis, probably almost a daily basis. And one of the things that has shifted with ransomware is organizations understanding what they have for data, how they're backing it up, and where they're backing it up. Historically and traditionally, it's organizations that have backup plans and backup systems, software backup systems, have backed them up on-site, or also known as on-prem, in their location. So some services have come out where you can pass or send those backup files external, outside of your organization, to a cloud service that will hold those files, so that if you do need to restore files, whether it be a basic or an accidental deletion or a ransomware attack, you would be able to do so in an appropriate time and manner, and still be able to operate your business.
So, Rob, in the days before ransomware and cyber being a household term, we were asking clients to do offsite backup because of the old-fashioned peril of fire. And what if somebody burnt down your building got burnt down and destroyed all your records? So this is just a different form of fire, so to speak, one that's much more common and intrusive. And in a similar vein, question number 2 is, after all these years of asking people to back up offsite, we're now saying, do you also back up on-site? And could you give the logic behind that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's ironic, right, that they're asking offsite and onsite. So from my perspective, the best way to ensure that your data is protected is to back it up offsite. The issue is, and this is where this is where the insurance companies are their brains are. This is what they're thinking about, which is if an entire business infrastructure goes down and needs to be restored, it can only be restored as fast as the internet pipe that the business has access to. And so if you're on, if you can imagine, if you're on a high-speed FiOS or cable connection, that speed would be one thing. If you're on a dial-up speed, AOL dial-up speed from days ago, it would be significantly slower and take significantly more time. So there's this question of, are you backing up externally to protect your data? Have you considered backing up locally in an offline manner so that for large chunks of data, in particular databases that you might need to run your business on a day-to-day basis, do you have access to them that you could restore quickly without having to worry about the pipe of the internet pipe or the speed to recover that data? Because again, each one of these systems that's being restored from the internet will use up space within the pipe and take up speed and slow down the overall process for reconstructing your environment. So for larger data files, you may also want to, or larger systems that are holding like a file server or a database, for example, you may want to back up those locally as well so that you can pull locally for the big chunks of data that you would need.
And Rob, isn't it also true that just because something's in the cloud, that can get infected as well? And sometimes your local may be the only pristine set of data you've got left. So it's redundancy.
So there's absolutely, and we'll talk about this later in the presentation. There's absolutely a concept of redundancy that insurance companies are looking for, and I think it's important that when you are setting up your backup systems to the cloud, locally, both ideally, that you're very actively looking at the configurations of the data as it is being sent, as well as it is being stored. So ensuring that data that's backed up is backed up in an encrypted format or in a format that can't be encrypted with ransomware is absolutely important and something that needs to be looking for. Most organizations haven't thought through that and often are impacted the same, just as you expressed, Chris, which is they've been impacted with, they thought they were backing up to the cloud or backing up locally correctly, and all of that information had been encrypted as well because they hadn't configured their system to back up appropriately.
So this leads to the next question. You'll see a logic developing here, and that is, can you recover all your business critical data and systems within 10 days? And what's your take on that, Rob? Why are they interested in, can you get all your information back in 10 days?
So one of the things they're realizing is that most businesses, most businesses have to manage their cash flow and have to be able to manage their customers, right? Their customers. So the idea here is if they can get back, if a business that has been that's had a ransomware attack, for example, or under a cyber attack, can get back up and running in 10 days, the impact to that business, and quite frankly, some of the claim payout that the insurance company might have to make is reduced or mitigated to a point that is considered more reasonable. Chris, do you have some thoughts on this?
Yes, this is really a business income question, but I think people understand about cyber insurance is that it will provide for ransomware payments, for the third-party cost of monitoring breaches for cyber deception and fund transfer fraud. But cyber insurance, if hopefully and properly in place, will also cover business income. So if you're down, for each day you're down, you have a loss of profits and you have continuing expenses. And so they're looking to see just how vulnerable they are as a carrier to your operation. So we're about 30% through the questions, and suffice to say at this point, Rob, that we've discussed that we want to have on-site backup, off-site backup, and know that we backed up the right system so within 10 days we can get it all back. So now the questions get a little bit more uphill. And the next one is, this is actually one of the original questions the carriers used to ask: do we have antivirus and firewalls in place? And while the answer to that for most people these days is yes, or they think it is, the big one is, how often are you updating these? And Rob, I think most people know what a antivirus software firewall is. So maybe you could take the time that we have to talk about the importance of updating and what you see out there when somebody's been a victim.
So in the past year, the Arcas risk team has been involved in a number of incident responses. This is situations where organizations were under cyber attack or hit with ransomware and needed support in rebuilding their environment. And one of the big things that we find is most organizations, especially small to medium-sized businesses, are not backing up appropriately. They're not backing up the right data or the right systems. They're not backing up in a frequency that needs to be, and maybe it's once a month or once a week as opposed to every day. And that's a problem. But then as we do our investigation, our analysis, we're working with sometimes law enforcement, sometimes insurance companies. What we find is that the client is running outdated antivirus or doesn't have antivirus running on all of the systems. Maybe they have them only on the servers, but not on the employee endpoints, or only on the laptops and desktops, but not on the servers. We've seen both of those. But what we also find is that they will have a firewall that quite frankly hasn't been, the firmware and the operating system that runs the firewall haven't been updated in months, sometimes years. The most recent ransomware that we worked on, ransomware incident response project that we worked on, it was the firewall operating system and firmware hadn't been updated in 3.5 years. The vendor had issued patches to say, hey, this is vulnerable, it needs to be updated. And the client just either didn't know or wasn't even aware maybe that the firewall had an operating system that ran the firewall that needed to be updated. And so it is it's especially now critically important for organizations to update their antivirus, make sure they stay on top of that, as well as update the firewall. And if you have a modern firewall, a next-gen firewall that offers scanning and detection services built into the firewall, signing up for those subscriptions to be able to add another layer of protection is important to ensuring that that your organization stays safe. Beth, did you have a question?
Yeah, so we did have one come up in the chat. This question comes from Lisa, and she says, hello, all the systems we use are cloud-based. So for example, Square to sell the items and track the inventory. How does this relate to a company that uses only cloud platforms? Are we expected to download reports out to local?
So is this in regards to data backup, or is this in regards to firewalls and antivirus?
I believe that this would be for the data backups.
Great question. When it comes to data backups, if you're using, just because you're using systems that are cloud-based doesn't mean that your data is necessarily being backed up. In fact, for organizations that use O365 Windows environment or Microsoft O365, for example. There are backup solutions inherent that can be purchased or applied to make sure that your data continues to stay protected.
Oh, this is a hiccup.
Chris?
What I'd also like to do on some of these questions, Rob, is at the end of this, we can write out a bit more of an answer and include it with the presentation.
Okay. Lisa,
So,
did you have a question?
That was Lisa's question.
Okay.
So, thank you, Lisa. The next question is, so just to wrap up on the last question, make sure that your software is updated regularly. Otherwise, it may be letting people in under the new attack schemes. And as we discussed in our prior webinar, do you have remote desktop protocol? And Rob, can you just explain what remote desktop protocol is?
Sure. In fact, it's tied very, very closely to updating your firewalls. So remote desktop protocol is a standard protocol that is used by many organizations to connect to or receive connections from computers typically outside of their organization. In some cases, organizations will use it for employees to connect if they don't have a VPN set up in their firewall. But most modern firewalls have VPN capability, and organizations can and should be using VPN capability, which basically allows for a single defined user to access from a remote location, an on-prem location, or an office location. RDP is more broadly used and applied than VPN.
So in my case, for the days when I was working from my home office, I could remotely tie into the Cleary computers, but we also have a VPN where I would have to open up the network, have it connect, and then I would tie into the Cleary computers. So the next step in that, so when I had the VPN, it was only that computer that could tie into the Cleary. The Cleary system would recognize, okay, this computer that's knocking on the door is at Chris Hawthorne's house, and it would know it was me, not somebody else. The next question that carriers will then ask is, do you have dual factor authentication, or also known as multi-factor authentication? And how does this add another layer of security?
Chris, can we go back to that last slide one quick? I want to make one more point here. The point here is that remote desktop protocol is often turned on on your systems, on your servers. The port is typically open at the firewall. And so why the insurance companies are asking about this is most small, medium-sized businesses use RDP for some aspect of their business. What they don't necessarily realize is that if RDP is open to the internet, it becomes very easy for attackers to just randomly scan the internet for this port to be open. And once they find an IP address that has this port open, they can attack this port. If this port is closed to the internet, then the attackers will never see it, and therefore it stays under control. And that's where you'll have insurers say, if you're using RDP, is it possible to move from an RDP topology to a VPN topology, which means it's a dedicated, identified, known user accessing, as opposed to the general internet that might be accessing your servers. When you have VPN, or even just wanting to access your system, we talk about multi-factor, dual-factor authentication. Something you know, something you have, something you are. So if you can imagine something you know, a username and a password, a system or a tool or a program, a software program, sending an alert to your phone that gives you a message that you have to type in, a text message or just an alert on an app that you have to press. So that's something you have because you have your phone. And then something you are to access your phone, you use your thumbprint or you type in your code. So now something I am, my thumbprint, gives me access to a message that I have from the software that ties back to my username and password that verifies that it is in fact Robert Fitzgerald accessing this program, this network, this bank account, because this user has name and password, has a secret code that we sent them, and access to that code using his thumbprint. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And I think many of us already have used it when we're trying to log into, even trying to log into a Google account now. For the most part, you need to, you get a code on your phone and you say, yes, it's me trying. Whereas if I was sitting here and my phone lit up and it said, hey, somebody's trying to log in, is this you trying to log into your Google or your bank account? I would know somebody got part of me, but they're not going to get all the way in the door. We have approximately 10 minutes left of our 30 minutes. And for those of you who can stay, this may run a little longer, but we promise we'll do our best. So the next question, Rob, is do you have a call back verification when making changes or setting up new payment instructions from a third party? What's this all about?
So one of the things that we're seeing is nowadays with electronic banking, it is very easy to move money and move money quickly, funds quickly. So one of the things that insurance companies are called, in fact, these are called, well, one of the things that insurance companies are interested in understanding in an effort to protect you as an insured, but as well protect the risks that they face insuring you, is that your organization has a training program to verify that teaches employees to verify when funds are being changed or new accounts are being set up. So essentially, if you have someone call to make a change to pay to a different bank account, how do you know that caller or that email is legitimate? What's the test that you have to make sure that that caller or email is legitimate? And the insurance companies are looking to make sure that that you're talking to your employees about this and that you have a process that you use to make sure that it's that the instructions, the new instructions that you've received are legitimate and not false and not a malicious actor.
And at the same time, Rob, you want to make sure that the parties that you're dealing with have this process, such as if we send instructions to the bank to start going to a different account for payroll, that the bank, we know that the bank is going to call us to verify.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's critically important as well, is understanding what your partners are doing to make sure that they protect or act in the best interest of your business.
And so this is a great point about to mention cyber deception, because the bank doesn't know if it's you or not. Cyber deception is somebody impersonating you or impersonating somebody to you. So imagine, if you will, they get part of your information and then they start sending instructions to your bank, to your payroll vendor, to your other vendors, to your clients. So for major movement of money, we want to make sure that we've talked to our people out there that we share financial information with, that there is a verification process. And I think the next question is part and parcel of this, and I think you pretty much addressed it, which is, have we trained people on this issue? Would you agree, Rob?
Yeah, no, I think we covered this. I think we covered this in in the previous slide. But this is absolutely important. It's something that I think a lot of organizations don't necessarily think about or think through, and making sure that there is, as best as possible, as reasonable as possible, there is a segregation of duties so that a rogue employee can't just make changes, verify them themselves. In fact, with a lot of banks will suggest small business owners just hold on to this process completely and entirely themselves, so that the owner of the business or the executive of the business is the one that is the only one that can make changes to payment requests and formats.
In the days of past, when we were talking about crime insurance, we would talk about segregation of duties because we wanted to prevent phantom vendors. And so having the second set of eyes is a great way to stop this. The next two questions are they're kind of the same question, but they have a slightly different impact. So the first question: after inquiry of the company, are you aware of any fact or circumstances, or do you suspect any circumstances which might give rise to a claim? And you'll see this on employment practices, on cyber, on directors and officers, on errors and omissions. And I'll jump in and answer this one. And that is, the reason they're asking this question is, if, especially if you're changing carriers, if you're aware of any fact or circumstance which might give rise to a claim, make sure you report it before the policy renews, because there are clauses in the various insurance policies which can stop the new carrier from paying a claim that should have been made under the old carrier. So this is a very, very important question in the renewal app or in a new business app. And one of the things to remember is the first part of the sentence: after inquiry of the company. So that's not just you. It could be the person at the front desk. It could be somebody in the management team. So we do need to make an inquiry. So is anybody out there aware of anything that could give rise to a claim? The next question is, within the last 5 years, have you suffered a loss over $25,000? And the reason for this question is, if you have, why, and what have you done to prevent it going forward? And the reason for that is, they say insurance companies don't want to buy a burning building. They want to start with a clean slate. So it's one thing that you've been hit in the past, but have you made any changes? So I think that probably speaks for itself. And then so from there, those are the questions, for the most part, the insurance carriers are going to ask you. And as you can see, with a little bit of preparation time, you can be ready to be able to answer those questions in the pod, know what the questions are, answer appropriately, and get the best terms available. But to walk away from this with what do we do? Rob, could you talk about the checklist for people to use?
Sure. I think understand that insurance companies right now, when it comes to cyber insurance, are being incredibly tough. And this is primarily driven by not only all the money they've had to pay out for ransomware, but for the first time, they're getting a very clear view and understanding of what steps businesses, how seriously businesses, their insureds, are taking or not taking cybersecurity. If it's become really important for organizations to understand and that they need to step up. So one, ensuring that they have that you have appropriate backups, ensuring that you're utilizing multi-factor authentication across your organization to access your computer, access your network, access any websites that you might use for services, access your bank accounts where available, that you have antivirus and endpoint detection and response software running on your laptops, on your desktops, on your servers, that you have, if you're in a physical location, that you're utilizing a firewall technology that's updated and maintained, and that you're utilizing 24/7 security monitoring, specifically logging activity, so that if there is an incident, a cybersecurity incident, the insurance incident response team can come back to your organization and say, we want to see the security log so that we can, the security activity log, so that we can review what happened, how it happened, and make sure that we can clean up this security incident as quickly and as completely as possible. I mean, one of the key things is making sure that you have cyber insurance. I'm a big believer now with the amount of activity that's out there, having cyber crime insurance as well. But to get these and to get the coverage that you're going to look for, you're going to also, as an organization, need a written information security plan and a written incident response plan. Those are going to lay out your policies and procedures within your organization. And it doesn't matter whether you're a 1 or a 2 person organization, or a 2,000 person organization, or a 20,000 person organization. You're going to want that under the governance. And then from there, for your own peace of mind, having a data breach attorney, on whether it be on retainer or just available to call, knowing who you're going to call during an incident if you need an incident response, being able to have your insurance broker, Chris, for example, on speed dial, understanding who to call from your IT services, whether it's a 1 person individual, whether it's an employee, or whether it's an outsourced service. Who do you call when you have an emergency and it's off hours, it's holidays, we're coming into a holiday period, and then other types of security services, and quite frankly, even public relations services, knowing who you could call if you had an issue is important, not only for your peace of mind, but to show the insurance company when you meet with them that you're able and willing to take action if a security event, a cybersecurity event, were to occur, you're prepared. Chris?
So it's worth noting that the industry reports that on the small business side, 60% of organizations that are hit are out of business within 1 year. And so in knowing the fact that it's pretty much a question of when, not if, doing this prevention and prep work, it just couldn't be more important for the survival of the organization. And as Rob said, whether it's 1 or 2 people or 1,000 people, in fact, the 1 or 2 people have a greater chance of loss because they just simply don't have the bandwidth for security work and doing it themselves. So, and so the call to action here is to, annually we should definitely be reviewing the policies, making sure that the terms aren't changing. We want to complete the checklist that Rob was so good to go through with us. And we want to, if you don't have that, we need to go out and get solutions in place. That's exactly the type of work Rob does. There are others who do it as well. The important thing to do is to get it done. And then to work with a firm like that to create a security and incident response plan. We are slightly over the time. I appreciate everybody's patience. Our goal was to get this done in 30 minutes or less so that people will come back to learn and walk away empowered and not end up with a migraine. Rob, you do a great job in putting things in terms we can understand. Also, I want to take a quick second to thank Carol Lacombe of Cleary Insurance and Hannah Darling and Bethany Jacobson of Arcas Risk. They put in an incredible amount of work to make this presentation possible. And of course, obviously, thanks to Rob Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chris.
I found Rob to be an invaluable resource in the cybersecurity arena for 15 years. And then most importantly, thank you to all who attended and are taking steps to be well prepared for your next renewal. And if there's anything Rob or I can do to help you going forward, and if you have questions, please do forward them, and we promise you that we will get you a response. So that is the conclusion of this webinar. We'll let you know what our next cybersecurity subject matter will be. And we hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. Thank you.